The village rested beside the river like a child leaning against its mother. Long before sunrise, women walked its banks with clay pots balanced on their heads. Fishermen checked their nets while the water still held the night's cold breath. Children learned to swim before they learned to run, and elders said a person could leave the village, but the river would never leave their blood. Everyone knew that life here did not begin in houses or fields. It began in the moving water. Yet alongside gratitude lived fear, quiet and steady, because the river was not asleep. It watched. It listened. It waited. The elders often gathered beneath the old baobab tree when the sun was gentle. Their voices were slow, heavy with memory. "Be careful what you promise near water," one would say, tapping the ground with his staff. Another would add, "The river has ears, even when your mouth is closed." Children sat at their feet, eyes wide, learning that words spoken near the river did not disappear. They sank. They stayed. Mothers warned their sons, fathers warned their daughters, and so the lesson passed like fire from hand to hand. Water never forgets betrayal, and it never rushes its judgment. Everyone saw the river as both blessing and warning. It fed the farms when the rains were kind. It filled nets with silver fish that danced in the sun. It cooled tired bodies and washed away dust from long days. But it could also rise without apology. Elders told stories of proud men who mocked the river and woke to find their homes gone. Here, respect for nature was not a choice or a belief. It was survival. To live was to listen. Among the villagers lived a man known for his silence. He worked harder than most, rising before dawn and resting long after others slept. When disputes arose, people trusted his fairness. When work was heavy, his hands were always there. Yet he spoke little, as if words cost him more than labor. Women nodded in respect when he passed. Men praised his discipline. Still, behind their admiration lay unease. Something about him felt unfinished, like a drum with a tight skin but no song. Whispers followed him, soft as sand in the wind. "A man like that, without a wife," someone would murmur. "Who will carry his name?" another would ask. In the village, a man's success meant little without a family beside him. Marriage was not only love, it was proof of belonging. Each season that passed without a wife added weight to his silence. His loneliness grew, not loudly, but deeply, like roots pressing into dry soil. At night, when questions slept and eyes turned away, he walked to the river. The moon painted the water in silver lines, and the village sounds faded behind him. He would sit at the edge, letting the cool air touch his face. Sometimes he spoke, not loudly, not proudly, but honestly. "You see me," he would whisper. The river answered only with movement, soft and endless. In that darkness, his heart felt exposed. And in that quiet, the river listened, as it always had. The river was calm that night, smoother than the skin of a calabash polished by time. The man sat at its edge, as he often did, letting his feet touch the cool water. His thoughts were heavy, his heart tired from carrying questions with no answers. The moon hung low, round and watchful, spreading pale light across the surface. Then the water moved. Not with anger. Not with noise. It parted gently, as if making space for something long awaited. From the river rose a figure unlike anything born of land. Her beauty was quiet, not sharp or demanding. Her eyes held the depth of old waters, patient and knowing. Her hair flowed like dark currents, and her skin shone as if it remembered the first rain the earth ever tasted. The man's breath caught. Fear tried to rise, but it found no place to stand. There was nothing threatening in her presence. She looked untouched by hunger, by shame, by the weight that bent human backs. She belonged to a world without gossip or judgment. The river did not roar to announce her. It simply accepted her, as it accepts the moon. "You sit here often," she said, her voice soft, like water slipping over stones. He swallowed. "The river listens better than people." A faint smile touched her lips. She did not ask his name. She did not ask about his past. In her gaze, there was no measuring, no expectation. Only seeing. With her came a feeling the man had never known. Not desire that burns, but relief that cools. Beside her, he did not feel unfinished. He did not feel late. There was no talk of wives, no whispers of bloodlines. Just presence. just calm. You carry many voices inside you, she said gently. They are loud, he replied. They do not reach me. Those words wrapped around his heart like shade in dry heat. In her world, there were no elders to judge him, no family to warn him, no future demanded before he was ready. With her, love did not ask for proof. When he reached out, the water did not pull her away. It held them both. No drums sounded. No elder raised a staff. No blessing was spoken aloud. Yet beneath the moon, with the river as witness, he accepted her. And she accepted him. There was no fire, no ritual smoke, no songs from land. Only moonlight trembling on water and a promise made without words. A union hidden from the village, untouched by tradition, unprotected by custom. Water became their curtain. Night became their shelter. What was hidden felt safe. For now. By day, the man returned to his work, quieter than before. By night, he returned to the river, fuller yet strangely off balance. His life looked peaceful to those who watched from afar. But beneath the still surface, something had shifted. The river knew it. And the silence that comforted him had begun to learn his name. By sunrise, he was the man everyone trusted. He greeted elders with lowered eyes and steady hands. He joined the farmers in the fields and worked until sweat darkened the soil beneath his feet. Women spoke well of him, calling him disciplined. Men pointed to him when teaching their sons patience. Under the wide sky, he followed custom like a well-worn path. No one questioned his steps. No one saw the split running through his chest. But when the sun fell and the moon climbed, his life turned quietly toward the river. The same feet that walked proudly through the village carried him to the water's edge. There, beneath the silver light, he belonged to a different world. The river welcomed him without questions. And within its depths waited the wife no land could claim. The danger of such a life did not arrive loudly. It settled like mist, slow and unseen. In daylight, elders spoke of him with approval. "That one has self-control," an old man said, stroking his beard. "He waits with wisdom," another added. The man bowed his head and accepted their praise, though each word pressed heavier than the last. His face became a mask of calm. Behind it, truth stayed hidden, breathing quietly. The more the village trusted him, the more he learned how easy it was to hide. Respect covered him like clean cloth, and no one thought to look beneath it. Appearances began to stand in place of honesty, and he allowed it, telling himself silence was kindness. At night, the river received him differently. There were no rules spoken aloud, no eyes to judge. When he slipped into the water, her presence surrounded him. Their love grew in whispers and touch, away from drums and witnesses. It was real, but it lived in shadows. The water guarded their bond, holding it safe from land, but also sealing it away. "Does the village sleep?" she once asked, her voice calm but curious. "They sleep," he replied. "And you?" "I wake only here." She loved him with a depth shaped by ancient currents. Her loyalty did not shout. It flowed. Yet she lived by laws older than the village itself. She could not cross onto land, could not sit by fire or walk among people. Her sacrifices were quiet, unnoticed by anyone except the river. "I would follow you anywhere," she said softly, "but the water will not release me." He said nothing. Love filled the space between them, but freedom did not. As days passed, the weight of her absence from his daylight life began to ache. He watched women laugh together in the market, children tug at their mothers' wraps, families gather under one roof. She could not stand among them. She could not share those joys. Her distance became more than space. It became a wound. Sometimes she would ask, "What do they sing about today?" "Harvest," he would answer, "and children." "Yes." She would look away then, toward the deeper water, where even moonlight struggled to reach. There was no name for their marriage spoken by elders. No libation poured. No child would rise to call him father from her womb on land. Bloodline, legacy, ancestry, all the things the village held sacred, were closed doors. The thought began to trouble him. Not because he loved her less, but because the future felt like a path fading into mist. One evening, an elder placed a hand on his shoulder. "Time does not wait forever," the old man said gently. The words followed him like a drumbeat. That night, by the river, He held her longer than before. Tradition tightened around his thoughts, pulling him toward land, toward expectation. And beneath the calm surface, the river moved, as if listening, as if counting the cost of a man trying to belong to two worlds under one sky. The elders did not speak at first. They watched. They noticed how the man greeted marriage talks with a polite smile and a quiet refusal. They saw how his name was missing when drums called men to fertility rites and ancestral blessings. No accusation was made, but eyes followed him longer than before. Silence, in that village, was louder than denial. One afternoon, beneath the baobab, an elder leaned on his staff and said softly, "A pot that stays empty too long begins to crack." Another replied, "Even the patient river asks questions when the rain does not come." The man bowed his head, feeling their words press against him like unseen hands. Suspicion spread gently, like smoke that does not sting the eyes but fills the air. At home, his family spoke more directly. An aunt pulled him aside, her voice low with worry. "My son, paths that turn away from tradition do not end in light," she warned, and uncle added, "I knew a man who loved what the elders forbade. His children never knew his name." Stories followed, old ones, wrapped in memory and fear. Tales of men who ignored customs and lost harvests, wives, or peace. Love was painted as danger when it walked without permission. Each word planted a seed of doubt in his heart. By the river, the change reached deeper waters. The mermaid felt it before he spoke it. His touch lingered less. His eyes drifted often toward the land. The river darkened earlier at dusk, its surface restless. She did not accuse him. She listened. One night, a fish leapt from the water and fell back lifeless. Another night, the moon hid behind clouds. These were her warnings, the language of her world. "Your heart is heavy," she said gently. "The village is loud," he replied. "The river hears what the village cannot," she answered. Soon, the nets came up empty. Fishermen muttered in confusion. Crops near the water cracked under the sun. No one understood, but everyone felt it. Balance was slipping, quietly, like sand through fingers. Then she arrived, the woman of the land. She came openly, laughing easily, greeting elders by name. She helped at gatherings, sat in sunlight, shared meals without fear. The village welcomed her as one welcomes morning. The man watched her and felt something dangerous, relief. With her, life looked simple, visible, celebrated. That night, by the river, he imagined a home with doors open to elders and children calling his name. Comfort dressed itself as destiny. And the river flowed on, listening. The man's thoughts weighed heavier than any basket of yams he had carried. Each step through the village brought admiration and expectation, yet his heart pulled elsewhere. He wanted the comfort of the sunlit world, the laughter of neighbors, the ease of a life seen and approved, but every memory of the river tugged at him like an anchor in the night. Shame began to press against his chest. The truth of his love, once a quiet flame, now felt like a secret fire smoldering under ash. Words he could not speak built walls between him and the one who had always listened without question. He avoided the river longer than usual. Footsteps that once traced familiar banks now ended at the edge of the village. The cool water waited silently, but he did not come. Absence replaced devotion. The nights were no longer shared, and the river seemed to sigh with the emptiness of his neglect. She sensed it before he spoke, before his hands lingered less, before his gaze wandered toward daylight paths. The moonlight revealed her unease. Currents stirred in restless whispers. "You are far," she murmured, her voice rippling like the water. I have much to do," he answered, words hollow, weighed with guilt. She did not press, yet the silence between them grew dense, heavier than the river's deepest pools. Her beauty, once radiant in the silver of moonlight, began to dull. The glow that had drawn him first now flickered, fragile as candlelight in wind. Each neglected smile, each absent touch, leached strength from her form. Love without recognition, the elders would say, is a slow, starving thing. The river, once serene and constant, responded. Currents twisted unpredictably. Fish abandoned their familiar paths, hiding where they had always fed. At night, the water whispered angrily over stones, restless and uneasy, mirroring the imbalance in hearts above it. Nature had begun to remember what humans sometimes forgot. Loyalty ignored, devotion unattended, cannot be hidden from the world forever. And so the man walked in two directions, carrying desire and guilt together, while the river waited, restless, reflecting the quiet unraveling of a love that once moved like its own eternal current. The woman arrived like sunlight spilling into shadowed corners. She walked openly through the village, her laughter carrying without hesitation, her hands offered to neighbors without shame. Children ran to her, elders nodded in greeting, and even the market women paused to admire her ease. She needed no invitation to belong. Her presence filled the empty space the man had left behind, as if she had stepped into a world that had waited silently for her arrival. "Good morning, Nia," an elder called, smiling as she bent to tie a child's sandal. "Good morning, uncle," she replied, her voice warm, steady, unafraid. The man noticed her everywhere he turned. She did not hide, did not whisper, did not wait for permission. Acceptance followed her like a shadow. Neighbors nodded, family members smiled, and the elder's approval seemed to hang in the air with the scent of cooking fires. One afternoon, beneath the shade of the baobab, an elder leaned toward him. "She is the answer to what was unfinished," he said, voice calm but firm. "Yes," another added. "Your place in life must be restored. Destiny cannot wait forever." Family voices joined the chorus, reminding him that tradition spoke with many tongues, all urging the same lesson: embrace what is sanctioned, what is seen, what is safe. He felt the warmth of approval seep into his heart. Each nod, each word, each hand clap felt like relief. Comfort settled over him, and with it, a quiet betrayal. Ease replaced the gnawing tension he had carried for years. He walked taller, smiled brighter, and allowed the village to see only the man they had always admired, forgetting the river that had once held his truest love. At night, he told himself the river wife was not real in the human sense. "She was never mine to take into the world," he whispered to the moon, convincing himself that love could be reduced to memory, that devotion could be erased without consequence. The heart that had known her now reshaped her as a dream, faint and distant, a story for the quiet water. Meanwhile, the village celebrated. Drums of fertility beat under the open sky, singing of lineage and belonging. Children danced in the dust, women swayed to the rhythm of songs passed down for generations, and men lifted praises to the ancestors. He stood among them, included in the circle, yet confined. Every drumbeat, every song, reminded him that while society welcomed him, the choice that brought him here had cost a love deeper than any ritual could recognize. The village swelled with laughter and song. Drums echoed across the dust, women sang praises of fertility and lineage, and children danced barefoot under the sun. The man's chest felt tight, a rope pulling him inward, as if the joy of others pressed against his own secret. Around him, faces smiled and clapped, yet each cheer reminded him of the hidden bond he had left behind. He laughed when he should have rejoiced, spoke when he should have been silent, and yet every word carried the weight of unspoken guilt. Happiness had become its own kind of chain. The river, once a gentle companion, no longer stayed within its banks. Overnight, waters rose, sneaking into homes and fields, reaching places no human hand could have opened. Fish floated among rooftops, and the scent of mud and wet wood filled every corner. Nature's warning was physical now, unavoidable, a silent voice pounding at the doors of mortals who had forgotten to honor promises made beside its depths. Elders huddled under the baobab, whispering warnings only half heard. "The spirits wait," one said, eyes shadowed with memory. "Men who forget, men who break vows. The river keeps its own reckoning." Fear moved quietly among them, spreading through stories told with knowing nods and sighs. Blame followed the path of absence, falling on what could not answer, on what could not speak for itself. Beneath the surface, she waited. Her eyes reflected the moon and the stars, unblinking, quiet. She understood at last. Love without honesty was never enough. She had given everything, yet her devotion alone could not shield the man from himself. The river accepted her sorrow, cradling her sacrifice where no human eyes could see, where only the water's pulse remembered the weight of true fidelity. Dreams invaded his sleep, restless and heavy. He saw nets tear, their mesh unraveling as if the river itself mocked the labor of men. Dawn arrived dark and swollen, the river reflecting the storm within his chest. Each warning, a dream, a broken net, a shadowed sunrise, spoke a single truth: nature mirrored the fracture between hearts. In silence, he chose. No words left his lips, no witnesses marked the moment. He stepped away from the river, leaving her reflection trembling in the moonlight. No farewell, no confession, only the quiet pull of a life that promised acceptance, ease, and safety. As he embraced the world of sun and open doors, comfort sealed the decision. Betrayal completed itself without confrontation, without argument. Destiny no longer wavered. The river sighed, restless and eternal, carrying the truth of what had been lost. The man stood before the elders and the villagers, hands raised in promise, voice steady yet heavy with unspoken truth. "I take her," he said, eyes fixed on the human woman beside him. Laughter and clapping erupted, blessings spilling over the warm earth. Yet somewhere deep beneath, the river listened, every ripple a witness to the breaking of what had been hidden for so long. Secrets had been sacred, but now the world saw what should have stayed in shadow. Fate stirred quietly, awakening in the depths as the villagers cheered for a love that ignored an older law. Drums pounded and songs rose under the blazing sun. Children danced, women clapped, and men offered blessings in rhythmic unison. On land, joy overflowed. Beneath the water, the river shivered, currents twisting as if sensing betrayal. Fish darted in confusion, weeds moved against the flow, and the water murmured warnings only it could understand. Happiness on land carried a weight unseen, a quiet tension under the surface, a promise that all was no longer as it should be. By midday, the river swelled. Its waters crept over the banks, muddy and unstoppable. Paths once safe became traps, familiar stones swallowed in turbulence. Birds squawked, fleeing the edges, and the scent of wet earth and upturned soil filled the air. Nature prepared to speak, its voice not in words but in force. Balance, so carefully maintained by respect and secrecy, began to unravel. The river, patient and ancient, moved to restore what humans had ignored. Floodwaters tore through the village, carrying away huts and thatched roofs. Memories of quiet dinners, woven mats, and whispered laughter disappeared in the rushing tide. Children clutched what little they could, elders shouted prayers into the wind, and the man watched helplessly. The cost of his public choice had become undeniable, etched in every broken wall and scattered possession. Loss was not a secret now, it was visible, unavoidable, touching all who had once celebrated. Fields, once green with promise, were swallowed beneath the roiling current. Cassava, maize, and yams vanished, leaving bare, mud-slicked soil. Hunger replaced the feast. Families looked to the future with wide, fearful eyes, realizing the river had reclaimed its due. What had been offered freely as sustenance, security, and growth was gone, swept away by consequences the man had ignored. The promise of legacy, of life continued through the land, now drowned under his choice. From the depths she rose. Her hair flowed like liquid moonlight, eyes glowing with the quiet fire of truth. She did not scream in vengeance, did not strike in fury. Instead, she embodied balance itself. "Look at what has been broken," her presence said without sound. The river itself heeded her, the currents shaping around her as if listening. The supernatural demanded recognition, not obedience, and the man finally understood. Justice is not always loud, but it is inevitable. The river churned beneath the first light of dawn, not in anger, but in truth. Her eyes, deep and shining like the water itself, met his across the waves. "I bring not wrath," she said, her voice a melody of currents and stones. "Love was never your crime. Deceit alone has broken the balance." Each ripple echoed her words, carrying the weight of centuries. The man could no longer hide behind smiles or silence. The river demanded honesty, not apologies. The power she held was not to punish desire, but to unveil every lie, every shadow where truth had been abandoned. He stumbled backward, heart pounding. I did not mean." His voice faltered, excuses evaporating before the cold clarity of her gaze. He realized how often convenience had replaced commitment, how his promises had been left to rot in secrecy. Silence, once a refuge, now felt like chains tightening around his conscience. Each breath reminded him of the vows broken and the trust betrayed. Responsibility spoke louder than any drum, echoing in every corner of his mind, leaving no room for denial. He looked toward the river, seeing not beauty alone, but the sacred love he had misused. The moments shared in moonlight, the quiet devotion she had offered, all had been hidden behind his convenience and fear. What was meant to honor the spirit, the bond of two lives intertwined, had been thrown into shadows, left to suffocate in neglect. Regret sharpened, cutting deeper than the floodwaters ever could. From the banks, elders murmured among themselves, their voices carrying both sorrow and understanding. "The river punished no one blindly," one whispered, hand raised toward the swelling currents. "It answers only to truth." Love itself was never cruel, only misused by those who forget its sacred weight. Knowledge, not anger, flowed through their words, restoring wisdom to tradition and reminding all who listened that the river sees everything. The mermaid lifted her gaze, calm yet unyielding. "I do not ask to be taken back," she said. "Nor do I seek pity. Honor me for what was given freely, for what I offered without demand. Recognition alone is enough." Her presence radiated justice, firm and unwavering, showing that sacrifice need not be claimed to be respected. He stood at the river's edge, trembling. Two worlds lay before him, one of land, one of water. The village called for his loyalty, but the river demanded acknowledgement of truth. No path offered ease. No choice allowed escape without loss. The currents whispered, ancient and patient, and the man knew, destiny had tightened its grip, and the choice he made now could never be undone. The man knelt at the riverbank, watching the currents pull away, carrying with them the moments he had taken for granted. "I see it now," he whispered, voice raw with shame. "Too late. I should have honored you, honored what we had." The words trembled like leaves in a storm. Time had become its own punishment. Every sunrise reminded him of what was lost. The love he had held in secret, cherished in shadow, now lay exposed as fragile and incomplete. His heart ached with clarity, the truth cutting sharper than any blade. Around him, the village felt the consequences unfold. Water, once giver of life, now stood as the unyielding witness. Floods swept through fields and paths, leaving nothing untouched. The river's voice was no longer gentle whispers or subtle ripples. It roared in consequence, revealing secrets the village had long ignored. Silence could no longer shield him. The currents bore the story of betrayal, each wave exposing the truth he had tried to hide. She emerged once more, rising from the depths, her presence calm, devoid of fury. "I leave not in anger, nor to claim victory," she said, voice carrying like the steady flow of a stream. "Justice has been spoken. Revenge is not mine to wield." Her form shimmered, radiant but serene, before sinking back beneath the surface. The river closed behind her with dignity, the supernatural world retreating as quietly as it had arrived. Though wounded, she carried no bitterness. Pain marked her, yes, but it was the pain of dishonor, not betrayal of heart. The river cradled her sacrifice, acknowledging the sincerity of her love in its silent embrace. She became the embodiment of devotion and loss, a testament to love that had been true even when mishandled. The man looked upon the waters, now calm but never forgetting. The flood had receded, leaving behind the quiet rhythm of the river as if nothing had happened, yet memory lingered beneath every ripple. Love had been real, even broken. Lessons had been carved into the village and into his soul: honor love, respect promises, and never let comfort outweigh truth. The river forgave the balance, but not the betrayal, and life would carry its memory forever. The man walked among the ruins of his village, each step heavy with the memory of what he had lost. He was alive, yes, but the survival carried its own weight, a punishment harsher than any physical blow. He whispered to the empty air, "I see now. Love taken without honor becomes a hollow thing." The river's song reached his ears, gentle yet unyielding, reminding him that his choices had not gone unnoticed. Pride, once his shield, had been washed away, leaving only humility and a deep understanding of responsibility. Each breath became an acknowledgement of lessons earned through suffering. Days passed, and he no longer sought to hide behind excuses. The mermaid's absence had carved a space in his life that no illusions could fill. He could not reclaim what was gone, and he did not try. The truth settled into the rhythm of his mornings, the murmur of the river marking each moment with remembrance. Acceptance became the only path toward growth, subtle yet transformative. The human woman moved through the village with a quiet strength. She bore scars from her own trials but did not let them hinder her steps. "We keep living, because to deny life is to dishonor it," she told the children who ran past her, her voice steady, rooted in reality. Her presence symbolized continuity, a reminder that life carries forward, even when pain remains. The elders gathered, speaking softly to the assembly. "Look at what has passed before your eyes," one said. "Loss teaches more than rumor, more than fear. The river spoke, and we have heard. Let this guide our hearts and our hands." The village learned not through punishment alone, but through shared understanding, the memory of disaster shaping wisdom and compassion. Tradition found its voice again, not as a chain, but as a shield. Customs exist to protect balance, an elder reminded the young men and women. Not to imprison love, nor to bind hearts blindly. Respect restored harmony, understanding replaced unquestioned obedience, and the village remembered the river not as a threat, but as a guardian of truth. The man, changed and chastened, walked beside this new awareness, carrying the weight of knowing, but also the hope of living rightly. The village gathered quietly by the river, the scent of wet earth lingering in the air. The man's silence, once a shield, was now understood as the deepest poison of destiny. Whispers of hidden truths had grown like weeds, strangling trust and rotting futures. A voice, soft but firm, rose among the elders. "Let no secret remain in shadow. Speak, for honesty is survival." The river mirrored their words, its waters restless, as if agreeing that concealment invited harm. Elders sat in circles beneath the baobab, their faces lined by memory and firelight. They spoke the events aloud, not to shame, but to preserve. "Hear this, children," one elder intoned. "The heart that hides its deeds sows suffering. Let these words guide you where sight cannot reach." Memory became a vessel of wisdom. The past, held in oral tradition, transformed pain into instruction. Every word carried weight, shaping the understanding of those who would follow. By the riverbank, children played while elders recounted the story again, their voices weaving desire, loyalty, and consequence into a single thread. "Desire without loyalty brings ruin," a grandmother whispered, her hands cupping the river's reflection. "Forces beyond our knowing demand respect. The water teaches, and we must listen." Generations learned that the river was more than water. It was a teacher, a witness, and a guardian of truth. And when the telling ended, silence held a new meaning. The final truth left by the river settled in hearts. Love without responsibility destroys. Tradition exists to protect balance, not to imprison, and betrayal calls forth justice, though forgiveness may not follow. The story's end was not a closure but a current flowing onward, carrying its lesson into all who would hear, reminding the village that the river remembers, always.